push to drive voters to the polls is one aspect to winning an election. But tonight we are witnessing a different tack. Amna's back to unpack the legal challenges ahead.
That's right, Judy. To help us make sense of this moment, I'm joined by Tammy Patrick. She's an expert on election administration with the Democracy Fund and a former elections official in Arizona. And Nate Persily, a professor at Stanford Law School and the co-founder of the Healthy Elections Project, which has been tracking coronavirus-related election litigation. Welcome back to you both, and thanks for being here. Tammy, I want to start with you because the process is still very much unfolding. And one of the things we've noticed is transparency has been sort of the name of the game for many elections officials. We saw from the Wisconsin Election Commission, they was tracking tweets as they were explaining what they were doing and what was going on. Philadelphia, as has been mentioned, has this live stream up where you can watch the ballots being counted if you so choose to spend your time that way. Take us inside some of these states where the count is still continuing, though. What is going on? How does that unfold? And why is it taking the time that it is?
Absolutely, and it's great to see you all. So what we're viewing here, and this looks like it's the Philadelphia Processing Center, is that there were a number of states that election officials, both at state and local level, had asked if they could have some additional time to process the ballots before Election Day, and that's a very standard protocol in many, many states where you can actually open up the envelopes, do your verification of the voter, and make sure that it is in fact the voter that voted that ballot, and then get it ready for processing and scanning. And then on Election Day, totaling up all of those votes. But unfortunately, in this moment, there were too many states, and some of the ones we're waiting on, that their legislatures and others stepped in with court orders and prevented them from really processing before Election Day. If you think about what we're seeing in these pictures, contemplate when you open your mail at home. Now magnify that by millions of envelopes. And in the state of Pennsylvania, we heard a lot about naked ballots and having multiple envelopes actually for every ballot packet that comes in. So right now we are literally watching, in the case of Detroit, about 900 or so individuals opening up envelopes, getting the ballots out, flattening them out, making sure that they're ready to go through the tabulators. And that all takes time.
Nate, let me ask you about this idea that we've heard from President Trump in his campaign that the vote should stop. We know that the campaign has filed suit in Michigan and in Pennsylvania to halt the vote. Nate, give us a sense of what the impact of those kinds of legal challenges could be in states where the vote has already been called and where it has yet to be called.
Well, let's just be clear that the vote has happened. The vote can't be stopped. The question is whether the counting is going to be stopped. And right now they're processing the ballots and then they count them through the machines and, if necessary, by hand. And so right now, all we're seeing is the normal process of tabulating the absentee ballots, figuring out what the final totals are. If there is a dispute over how those absentee ballots were handled or whether some of them were legitimate or not, well, then we have either through a recount or other kinds of litigation, then you'll have some contest of the results. Right now, there are many different cases that have either been threatened or are already in court. And they have sort of several kind of common themes to them. The first is that they're trying to sort of bring up a lot of dust to sort of cloud the election results, right? It's not clear what the issues are going to be with these absentee ballots that are leading to alleged fraud or the like. But the themes that you see in these cases are allegations that the local officials allowed some people to cure their absentee ballots, meaning that if there were defects, they just allowed them to correct those mistakes. Allegations that there may have been, even political preferences that sort of got into the mix there as to how they allowed certain voters to cure, depending on the locality and the like. But then, as one of your reporters mentioned before, there's the allegation that you didn't have adequate observation of the process. And that's what they're suggesting was happening in Philadelphia and elsewhere.
Well, Tammy, we just heard Nate mention the recount issue, which a lot of people have questions about because the Trump campaign has now said they will request a recount in Wisconsin, which was called for Joe Biden. What does that look like? Can a recount be triggered just like that?
Absolutely. In fact, there are a handful of states, a number of states, where there is an automatic trigger for a recount. So if the measure of victory is within a certain percentage point, there's automatically a recount. It's also the case that in some states they have where you can't ask for a recount. They have what they often referred to as sore loser laws, because quite often we know that individuals that didn't receive as many votes as they thought they should, or they thought were cast for them, it's very difficult for them to believe such a thing. So states have protocols in place to both trigger an automatic recount if in fact it is a very close race, others prevention of frivolous lawsuits, and then there are some that if you want to pay for it, you can have a recount. And that's where it's really quite the landscape. But it is important to know that there are, as Nate mentioned, there are no new ballots being cast. These ballots being cast are just being counted. And many of these ballots have been in the possession of the local election officials for days and if not weeks. They just weren't allowed to process them.
Some important clarification as folks are looking for that information. That is Nate Persily and Tammy Patrick joining us tonight. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.